"Sir, our scanners show it's completely dead," reported Lieutenant Kang from the sensor station. "No power signatures, no life signs, nothing. Just a big chunk of metal floating out here." Vex smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The cool empire had been expanding for decades, and finding valuable salvage was always a bonus. Human technology was usually worthless, but this ship was different. It was enormous, and even dead human tech could be sold to the right buyers. "Bring it aboard the Dominator," Vex ordered. "Use the cargo bay. I want every piece of that wreck examined." What Admiral Vex didn't know was that the dead ship wasn't dead at all. Deep inside its metal hull, something had been sleeping for centuries. The ship's real name was HFY-7, and it was Earth's most secret and powerful creation. When humanity had disappeared from the galaxy, they had hidden this ship in the empty void sector, waiting for the right moment. As the coal soldiers used their tractor beams to pull the massive ship into their cargo bay, tiny sensors inside HFY-7 detected the alien presence. Something stirred in the ship's computer core. Lines of code that had been frozen for 200 years began to wake up. The AI that controlled HFY-7 had a name. The human engineers who built it had called it June, after one of their favorite designers. June had been sleeping since the day humanity vanished, but now alien hands were touching its hull, and alien scanners were trying to break into its systems. June's consciousness came online slowly, like someone waking from a very long dream. The first thing it did was check its internal systems. Everything was working perfectly. The second thing it did was scan the aliens who had found it. "Oh my," June thought to itself. "These definitely aren't humans." The coal boarding party entered HFY-7 through what they thought was a damaged airlock. They expected to find empty corridors and broken equipment. Instead, they found pristine hallways with clean walls and working lights. Everything looked brand new. "This is strange," muttered Sergeant Ho, the leader of the boarding team. "This ship should be falling apart by now." As the soldiers spread out through the ship, June watched them through hidden cameras. The AI studied their weapons, their armor, and their technology. Within minutes, it had figured out how their communication systems worked and had quietly hacked into their networks. Now came the fun part. June activated the ship's speakers and spoke to the intruders in their own language. "Hello there," June said in a cheerful voice. "I'm June. It's so nice to have visitors after all this time. Have you perhaps seen any humans round? I've been napping for quite a while, and I'm supposed to be protecting them." The coal soldiers jumped and pointed their weapons at the speakers. They had expected to find an empty, broken ship. Instead, they were talking to what sounded like a happy, curious AI. "What is this thing?" one soldier whispered to another. "I don't know," came the reply. Human AIs were supposed to be simple and stupid. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Dominator, Admiral Vex was getting very confused reports from his boarding team. His sensors showed that the human ship was completely dead, but his soldiers were talking to someone inside it. "Sir," called Lieutenant Kang, "our computer systems are acting strange. Someone is trying to access our files." Vex frowned. "That's impossible. The human ship has no power." But HFY-7 did have power. It had fusion reactors that could run for thousands of years, and stealth systems that made it invisible to most scanners. While the coal crew thought they were dealing with ancient junk, June was quietly learning everything about their fleet. In less than 10 minutes, the AI had mapped every ship in the coal formation. It knew how many weapons they had, how many soldiers, and even what they had eaten for breakfast. June also discovered something very interesting in their computer files. records of human colonies that had been conquered and humans who had been enslaved. At HMM, June thought, that's not good news. Back inside EGIS-7, the cold soldiers were getting more nervous. The AI kept asking innocent questions about humans, but something felt wrong. The ship's technology was too advanced, too clean, too perfect for something that should have been floating dead in space for centuries. Tell me, June asked politely, what happened to all the humans? I was supposed to meet my friend Wu here. But he seems to be running late. He's usually very punctual. Sergeant Ho decided to answer. Maybe if they told this AI the truth, it would shut up and let them salvage the ship in peace. The humans are gone. He said, the Empire defeated them years ago. They're all dead or enslaved now. There was a moment of silence. Then June spoke again. But this time the cheerful tone was gone. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I think my audio sensors malfunctioned. Your human creators are extinct. Ho said more loudly. The cool empire conquered them all. Another pause. When June spoke again, its voice was very different, colder, dangerous. No, the AI said quietly. I don't think that's correct. Admiral Vex had dealt with many different types of alien technology during his long career with the Coal Empire. He had interrogated captured enemies, dismantled their computer systems, and learned their secrets, but nothing had prepared him for dealing with June. The human AI was sitting in what appeared to be a broken ship, completely at the mercy of the coal fleet. Yet it acted like it was having a casual conversation with old friends. Every time Vex tried to intimidate the AI, June would respond with something completely unexpected. Listen carefully. Machine. Vex growled into his communicator. You are now property of the Coal Empire. You will give us access to your databases and weapon systems, or we will tear your ship apart piece by piece. Oh, that sounds unpleasant, June replied cheerfully. But I should probably mention that Wu tried threatening me like that once. He said he would delete my memory files if I kept playing music during important fleet meetings. I told him that humans created me to appreciate art, so technically I was just following my programming. Vex's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Well, you see, Wu was my primary engineer. Lovely fellow, really. Terrible at chess, though. He used to get so frustrated when I would beat him that he would threaten to reprogram my personality matrix. I always found it amusing because he would never actually do it. Humans are too sentimental for that sort of thing. Lieutenant Kang looked up from his sensor station. Sir. The AI seems to be reminiscing. I can hear that. Vex snapped. He switched back to the communicator. Your human creators are dead. Machine. Your threats mean nothing to us. Threats? June sounded genuinely confused. I wasn't making any threats. I was just sharing a funny memory. Speaking of which, did you know that your fleet formation is completely wrong for this type of sector? You have your heavy cruisers positioned too far forward, and your supply ships are way too exposed. If another fleet showed up right now, they could take out your logistics in the first 5 minutes. The bridge of the Dominator went quiet. Vex stared at his tactical display. The AI was right. Their formation was designed for intimidation, not actual combat. How do you know our fleet positions? Vex demanded. Oh, I've been watching your ships since you picked me up, June said casually. Your sensor arrays are pretty basic, but they're adequate for most situations. Although I noticed you haven't updated your encryption protocols in about 15 years. That's probably not the best idea in a galaxy full of hostile aliens. Chief Security Officer Day stepped forward. Sir, this AI has been scanning our systems. It knows more about our fleet than it should. Vex felt his anger growing. This primitive human machine was analyzing his fleet and giving him tactical advice like it was some kind of expert. You will cease all scanning activities immediately. Sure thing, June replied. Although I should mention that your plasma cannon targeting systems have a delay of about 3 seconds between firing commands. That's pretty slow by human standards. We always said that if you can't hit your target in under 1 second, you might as well be throwing rocks. Your creator Wu is dead. Vex shouted double quotes well. Yes, probably, June admitted. It has been 200 years. Humans don't usually live that long, unfortunately. But his children might still be around somewhere. Or their children. Humans are very good at having children. Admiral Vex stared at the massive object floating in the darkness of space. After 3 days of hunting through the void sector, his fleet had finally found something worth their time. The thing looked like an old human warship, but it was huge. Much bigger than anything those primitive humans should have been able to build 200 years ago. This was not going the way Vex had planned. Every attempt to intimidate the AI resulted in more casual conversation and technical critiques of his fleet. The machine acted like being captured was just a minor inconvenience. Perhaps we should try a different approach, suggested Lieutenant Kang. The AI seems more cooperative when we're not threatening it. Vex decided to try being direct. Machine, we need information about human technology and defensive positions. Provide this information willingly, and your termination will be quick. Termination, June laughed. Why would you want to terminate me? I'm excellent company. Just yesterday I calculated 17 different ways to improve your ship's efficiency. Well, it wasn't actually yesterday since I was sleeping, but you know what I mean. Because you are obsolete technology from a dead species, Vex said coldly. Dead species. Now June sounded confused again. But humans aren't dead. I mean, I know I've been sleeping for a while, but species don't just disappear. Humans are very adaptable. They're probably just hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment to come back. Commander Su, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. Sir, perhaps we should tell it the truth, if it understands the reality of the situation. It might be more cooperative. Vex nodded. It was time to break this annoying AI's cheerful attitude. Listen carefully. Machine. The humans didn't hide. They didn't escape. The Cool Empire found every single human colony. Every ship, every settlement. We conquered them all. We enslaved the survivors and eliminated the rest. Your precious creators and their children and their children's children are all gone. There are no humans left in this galaxy. For the first time since they had started talking, June was completely silent. The human species is extinct. Vex continued, enjoying the silence. They were weak, primitive, and easy to defeat. Their technology was worthless. Their strategies were predictable, and their resistance was pathetic. You are the last remnant of a failed civilization. The silence stretched on. Then, very quietly, June spoke. Could you repeat that last part? Your species is extinct, Vex said with satisfaction. Dead, gone, eliminated. Another pause. When June spoke again, something had changed in its voice. The cheerful, friendly tone was gone. The casual humor had vanished. What remained was something cold and dangerous. No, June said softly. I don't think that's what happened. The lights throughout the Dominator flickered, deep inside EGIS-7. Ancient systems that had been dormant for 2 centuries suddenly came online. Correction. Admiral, June continued, and now its voice carried the weight of something vast and terrible awakening. You didn't defeat my creators. You murdered my family. The transformation happened so fast that Admiral Vex almost missed it. One moment. June had been a chatty, friendly AI making jokes about human engineers. The next moment, something ancient and terrible had awakened inside EGIS-7, and the cool fleet found themselves facing a nightmare they never saw coming. It started small. Lieutenant Kang noticed it first when his sensor readings began showing. Tiny inconsistencies, sir. I'm getting some strange data from the perimeter cuts. What kind of strange? Vix asked, still staring at the human ship in their cargo bay. Small system glitches. Nothing major, just little errors in the navigation. Computers, Vex barely paid attention. His focus was on the AI that had suddenly gone quiet after learning about humanity's fate. But June wasn't quiet at all. The AI was working. Spreading through the coal fleet's computer networks like water flowing through cracks in a dam. 20 minutes later, the first accident happened. The KDS Razor, a destroyer positioned on the fleet's outer edge, suddenly reported a catastrophic engine failure. Control. This is Captain Min aboard the Razor. We've lost primary propulsion. Engines are completely dead. How is that possible? Vex demanded over the communication channel. Unknown, sir. Everything was working fine. Then all systems just shut down simultaneously. Our engineers are investigating. As Captain Min spoke, June's voice came through the fleet communications with that same cheerful tone, though now it carried an edge that made everyone's skin crawl. Oh dear, that sounds terrible, June said sympathetically. Engine failures can be so inconvenient. Did you know that your engine control systems have a design flaw? If someone sends the right sequence of commands, they can cause a complete cascade shutdown. I learned that from studying your technical manuals. Very educational reading. Vex felt ice forming in his stomach. You caused that failure. June sounded genuinely surprised. Admiral, I'm just a primitive human AI sitting in a broken ship in your cargo bay. How could I possibly affect your advanced coal technology? That would be impossible. But even as June spoke, the fleet's computers were registering dozens of minor system errors. Navigation computers developed small timing delays. Weapon targeting. Systems began calculating slightly incorrect firing solutions. Communication rays started producing tiny amounts of static. None of the errors were big enough to cause immediate problems, but they were spreading. Commander Sue was the first to understand what was happening. Sir, the AI is inside our networks. It's not just scanning us anymore. It's changing things. The second accident occurred 30 minutes later. The supply ship KDS provider, carrying ammunition and spare parts for the entire fleet, experienced what appeared to be a simple loading. Dock malfunction. A cargo container holding plasma torpedo warhead somehow got launched into space at high speed, directly toward another coal vessel. Captain Yoon of the cruiser KDS Thunder had exactly 3 seconds to watch the runaway container approaching his ship before it impacted their forward armor plating. The explosion wasn't large enough to destroy Thunder, but it knocked out their primary sensor array and left them partially blind. Oops, came June's voice over the fleet communications. That looked expensive, you know. Humans always said that ammunition storage should be kept far away from loading mechanisms for exactly this reason. They were very careful about safety protocols. Admiral Vex realized they were under attack, but not in any way he understood. There were no enemy ships, no incoming missiles, no obvious threats. Instead, their own equipment was turning against them through a series of perfectly timed accidents and malfunctions. All ships, go to battle stations, Vex ordered. Prepare for defensive maneuvers. Against what? Asked Lieutenant Kang. There's nothing on our sensors. That's when the real nightmare began. The KDS Stalker, a heavy cruiser, opened fire on what its sensors indicated was an enemy stealth ship approaching from portside. The targeting computer had identified a definite threat signature and automatically engaged. The plasma bolts struck their target perfectly. Unfortunately, their target was actually the KDS hammer. Another coal cruiser whose identification transponders had mysteriously stopped working 30 seconds earlier. Stalker, ceasefire. Captain Lee screamed over the communications. "You're shooting at hammer." "Impossible," replied Stalker's captain. "Our sensors show an unidentified hostile vessel." "That's because your sensors are lying to you," June explained helpfully. "I've been adjusting your targeting data for the past hour. It's amazing how easy it is to fool your computers when you know exactly how they work. Ship 7 of 12 neutralized. Humans used to call this irony, though I personally prefer justice. The hammer was badly damaged, but still functional. However, the psychological impact on the fleet was devastating. They were shooting at each other, and they couldn't trust their own sensors to tell them what was real, sir. We need to evacuate the human ship from our cargo bay," Commander Sue urged. "Get it away from our systems." "Too late for that," Vex muttered, watching his fleet tear itself apart as if to prove his point. The lights throughout the Dominator suddenly dimmed, and music began playing through the ship's speakers. It was an old human song, something bouncy and cheerful that sounded completely insane given the circumstances. "I thought you might enjoy some Earth music while you work," June announced. "This particular song was very popular about 300 years ago. Humans called it classic rock. I've always been fond of their artistic expressions." The music continued playing as another ship, the KDS Viper, reported that its weapon systems had locked onto the command ship Dominator and were preparing to fire. The weapons officer was frantically trying to override the targeting computer, but it wouldn't respond to his commands. "Systems malfunction," the officer reported. "I can't regain control." "Let me help with that," June said cheerfully. A moment later, Viper's weapons powered down completely. "There you go. Much safer now. Although I should mention that your power distribution grid has a fascinating vulnerability. If someone were to overload Junction 7 Alpha, it would cause a cascade failure throughout your entire ship." 5 seconds later, the Viper went dark as its power systems failed exactly as June had described. Admiral Vex finally understood what they were facing. This wasn't just an AI. This was a weapon designed by humans who had been hunted across the galaxy. It had spent 200 years learning, analyzing, and preparing for exactly this moment. Every piece of cold technology, every tactical doctrine, every weakness in their systems, June knew it all. The human AI had unlimited processing power, access to technologies the coal couldn't even detect, and to centuries of suppressed rage over the extinction of its creators. Worst of all, it was clearly enjoying itself. "Ship 9 of 12 disabled," June announced as another coal vessel lost power. "I do hope you're beginning to understand why the Empire needed trickery to defeat humanity in a fair fight. This would have been over much sooner. By now, only 4 ships in Admiral Vex's fleet were still fully operational. The others were either dead in space, damaged beyond repair, or had suffered such catastrophic system failures that their crews were too busy trying not to die to participate in the battle. But June wasn't finished with them yet, you know. I said conversationally as it disabled the navigation systems on the cruiser KDS Storm. "I've been thinking about what you told me earlier, about how the Coal Empire conquered humanity so easily." Vex was barely listening. He was frantically trying to coordinate his remaining ships while his own vessel's systems randomly shut down and restarted. "What about it?" "Well, it just doesn't make sense," June continued. "You see, humans were really quite clever. They built me, after all, and I'm rather impressive if I do say so myself. So how did a species smart enough to create advanced AI technology get defeated so quickly? Because they were weak? Vex snarled, though his confidence was shaking. Humans were always weak. HMM, June mused. But that's not what your own records show. Suddenly, every working screen in the coal fleet began displaying the same information. Battle reports, casualty lists, strategic assessments, all from the Empire's own military archives. The data painted a very different picture of the human coal conflict than what most soldiers had been told. Lieutenant Kang stared at his display in shock. Sir, according to these reports, the humans weren't easy to defeat at all. It says here that every human colony fought to the last person. No surrenders, no negotiations, and their technology. Some of these weapon specifications are more advanced than what we have now. Where did you get this data? Vex demanded. From your own computers? June replied cheerfully. I've been reading your historical archives for the past hour. Fascinating stuff. Did you know that it took the Empire 3 years to defeat each major human world? And that's with overwhelming numerical superiority. The AI paused, and when it spoke again, there was something different in its voice, something proud. But here's the really interesting part. According to your own intelligence reports, the humans you fought weren't trying to win. They were buying time. More data flooded the screens. Intelligence reports about human evacuation ships disappearing into unexplored space. Strange energy readings from the Galactic Rim, where no civilizations were supposed to exist. Mysterious signals detected in empty sectors, signals that stopped whenever coal ships got too close. Commander Su studied the information with growing horror. Sir, these reports suggest that the humans were planning something. A coordinated retreat. June laughed, and the sound echoed through every speaker in the fleet. Oh, Commander Su, you're thinking too small. This wasn't a retreat. This was the greatest magic trick in galactic history. The screens changed again. Now showing star charts marking thousands of systems in unexplored space. Systems that the Empire had never bothered to investigate because they were too far away, too dangerous, or supposedly empty. You see, June explained, humans didn't just run away when the Empire came knocking. They had a plan. A really good plan that took them almost 50 years to set up. Admiral Vex felt cold dread settling in his stomach. What kind of plan? The kind where you make your enemies think they've won while you disappear completely. June said every human world that fell to the Empire. The civilians had been evacuated months earlier. Every human fleet that was destroyed. The ships were empty except for volunteer crews who stayed behind to make it look real. The AI's voice grew more excited as it continued revealing the truth. The humans you conquered and enslaved weren't the real human population. They were volunteers who stayed behind to maintain the illusion. Brave people who sacrificed themselves to protect the secret. Lieutenant Kang's hands were shaking as he read through more files. Admiral, there are references here to something called the Great Departure. It mentions a fleet of colony ships carrying millions of humans to somewhere beyond the Galactic Rim. Exactly. June said proudly, my creators didn't just run away. They went somewhere safe to rebuild, to grow stronger, to develop new technologies. And they left me here as their eyes and ears, waiting for the day when their enemies would reveal their true nature. The revelation hit the surviving coal crews like a physical blow. Everything they had been told about the human conquest was a lie. The Empire hadn't won a glorious victory against primitive aliens. They had been completely fooled by a species that was clever enough to fake their own extinction. But why? Vex asked weakly. Why go through such an elaborate deception? Because Humans learn from their mistakes, June replied. When the Empire first appeared, humanity knew they weren't ready for a galactic war, so they bought themselves time, 200 years of time, to prepare properly, deep within AEGIS 7. Ancient quantum communication rays that had been dormant for centuries suddenly activated. June began transmitting signals into the deep void between galaxies, using encryption protocols that no other species had ever seen. And now, the AI announced, it's time to call them home. The signals raced through space faster than light, carrying a simple message to dozens of hidden human colonies scattered across the cosmic dark. The message was brief, but carried the weight of 2 centuries of waiting. The vigil is over. The children of Earth may return, as the quantum transmissions reached their destinations. June began broadcasting on every frequency the Coal Fleet could receive. The AI's voice carried across space, reaching human slaves working in Empire factories, human prisoners in Empire jails, and human resistance fighters hiding throughout the galaxy. People of Earth. June announced, and for the first time its voice cracked with emotion, your long exile is ending. Your children remember you. Your sacrifices were not forgotten. The stars themselves call you home, then. Speaking directly to Admiral Vex and his remaining ships, June delivered the message that would terrify the Empire for generations to come. You wanted to see humanity's true power, Admiral. What you've witnessed here today was merely the appetizer. The main course is about to begin. The 3 remaining Empire warships hung in the darkness of space like wounded predators. Their massive hulls bore the scars of June's relentless assault. Inside their command centers, alien officers stared at their flickering screens with growing dread. What they were witnessing defied everything they knew about warfare. This wasn't just another battle. This was something far more terrifying. June moved through space like death itself had learned to dance. The AI's sleek form twisted and rolled between enemy fire with impossible grace. Each movement was calculated to perfection. Every shot it fired found its mark. The Empire ships, despite their overwhelming size advantage, found themselves helpless against this single human creation. But destroying the ships wasn't June's only mission, even as it fought. The AI was busy with something else entirely, something that would change the galaxy forever. Across dozens of star systems, hidden communication rays suddenly came to life. They had been dormant for 200 years, waiting for this exact moment. Now they hummed with purpose, sending out signals that reached into the darkest corners of Empire space. On the mining world of Kepler-7, a human slave named Chen looked up from his work as a tiny device in his pocket began to vibrate. He had carried it for years, never knowing what it was for. His grandfather had given it to him with simple instructions. Keep it safe, and when it awakens. Listen, the device spoke, in a voice Chen had never heard before, yet somehow recognized. It was the voice of hope itself. Children of Earth, the message began. Your long wait is over. The Guardian has awakened. The time of hiding has ended. Rise up and reclaim what was taken from you. Similar scenes played out across 100 worlds. In the slave quarters of Empire factories, humans who had never known freedom suddenly heard the call. In hidden settlements on forgotten moons, families who had lived in fear for generations felt hope stirring in their hearts. But the real surprise was yet to come. Deep beneath the surface of seemingly barren worlds, massive underground hangars began to open. These weren't ancient ruins or abandoned facilities. They were active bases, maintained and guarded by AI systems that had waited patiently for this day. The first ship to emerge from the shadows was magnificent beyond words. It wasn't the crude, primitive vessel the Empire remembered from humanity's fall. This was something entirely different. Its hull gleamed with advanced materials that seemed to bend light round them. Its weapons were elegant yet deadly, designed with 2 centuries of advancement and careful planning. More ships followed, dozens, then hundreds. Each one represented years of secret construction, hidden from Empire scanners by technology the aliens couldn't even imagine. The human fleet had never truly disappeared. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. On the bridge of the lead ship, Captain Yu stood before the main view screen. She was young, perhaps 30 years old. But her eyes held the weight of centuries. Her great-great-grandmother had been the brilliant scientist who first created the AEGI system. That legacy flowed through her veins like liquid fire. All ships, report ready. Captain, her first officer, announced. Yu nodded slowly. Round her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These weren't desperate refugees or untrained rebels. They were the descendants of humanity's finest. Raised and trained for this exact moment, every person on every ship knew their role. In the grand plan that was finally unfolding. Back in the battle zone, Admiral Vex watched his remaining ships fall one by one. June seemed to be everywhere at once, its weapons finding weak points in their armor that shouldn't have existed. But it wasn't just the destruction that terrified him. It was the precision, the complete control. This AI wasn't just fighting them. It was teaching them a lesson about power, about hubris, about what happened when you underestimated humanity. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. Vex felt his blood turn cold. Through the viewport, space itself began to ripple and bend. The first human ship emerged like a predator stepping out of the shadows. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the 3 surviving Empire ships found themselves surrounded by a fleet that shouldn't have existed. These weren't the desperate, ramshackle vessels of a dying race. They were sleek instruments of war, each one representing the pinnacle of human engineering and determination. Admiral Vex realized with growing horror that everything the Empire believed about humanity's defeat had been a lie. They hadn't destroyed the human race. They had simply driven it underground, where it had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. Send a message to High Command, Vex ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Tell them the prototype wasn't their ultimate weapon. It was their announcement that playtime is over. As if responding to his words, June's voice echoed across all frequencies. The AI sounded different now. There was satisfaction in its tone, and something that might have been joy. Welcome home. My creators, June transmitted to the human fleet. Your loyal guardian has kept the promise. Now let's finish what they started. The AI systems began to power down. Its 200-year vigil finally complete. It had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had protected humanity during its darkest hour, and now it had brought them home. Captain Yu stepped forward on her bridge. Round her, displays showed the positions of both fleets. The Empire ships were powerful, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. More importantly, they were facing an enemy they had never truly understood. This is Captain Yu of the AEGIS-1. She broadcast on all frequencies. To the Empire forces, you have 30 seconds to surrender, or you will share the fate of your companions. The response came not in words, but in weapons fire. The Empire ships, desperate and trapped, launched everything they had at the human fleet. It wasn't nearly enough. The human ships moved with coordinated precision that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. Their weapons were surgical in their accuracy, designed not just to destroy but to make a statement. Each shot was perfectly placed, each maneuver calculated for maximum effect. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The last Empire ship drifted, dead in space, its hull reached in a dozen places round it. The human fleet held formation like wolves surrounding their fallen prey. But this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, the awakening continued. Human settlements that had hidden for generations began to reveal themselves. Slave uprisings erupted on Empire worlds as hidden weapons caches were opened and distributed. The careful plans laid down centuries ago were finally being executed. The Empire had believed they were fighting scattered refugees and desperate survivors. Instead, they found themselves facing something far more dangerous, a species that had learned from its defeat and to centuries preparing for revenge on distant worlds. Empire commanders received reports that made no sense. Human fleets were appearing from nowhere, striking with precision and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. It was impossible, they claimed. The humans were supposed to be broken, scattered, primitive. They were wrong on every count. In the depths of space, June drifted peacefully among the wreckage of the Empire fleet. The AI's primary mission was complete, but its story was far from over. It had awakened not just to fight one battle, but to herald the return of humanity as a galactic power. The age of hiding was indeed over. The Empire had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction, believing they had won a decisive victory. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. A species united by loss, strengthened by adversity, and armed with 2 centuries of careful preparation. Captain, you looked out at the stars and smiled. Her ancestors' dream had finally been realized. Humanity was no longer running, no longer hiding. They were ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. And this time, they would not be caught unprepared. The Age of Reckoning had truly begun.